So, James, way back in episode 6, we talked about the new Universal theme park that will be opening in 2031 in Bedfordshire, which, as we all know, is Britain's most important county. Um, and I think it's fair to say that you're a big theme park fan. You're really looking forward to this, right?
Yeah, I'm really excited about this, which is weird because I'm a total coward. And as discussed previously, I don't like roller coasters at all. And I'm basically incapable of enjoying anything without a sort of sense of detached irony about it. So, I went to Disney World a few years ago, which was fascinating from a seeing the system at work perspective. But as I was there, I was enjoying it, but I was also thinking, look at these sheep engaging with a brand completely sincerely. They're just tools of the capitalist machine.
You sound like a fun person to go on holiday with, James.
I think Liz was pleased that a mutual friend of ours was also there, enjoying it on a less ironic level than I was. But anyway, no, I am genuinely excited about this new theme park. I'm interested to see what IP is going to be leveraged. If you want another classic O'Malley prediction, as I know they always go down well on this podcast, I think there's going to be a Back to the Future ride of some sort. But the twist is going to be they're going to be going back to the 90s because that's how you get millennials come along. They bring their kids and the kids just enjoy like the roller coaster or whatever. But the adults, the parents, they get to listen to a bit of Nirvana or see one of the Spice Girls or something like that.
Still trying to make that film happen, James, and quite right too. It's sort of at young people for me, I have to say. Theme parks, I'm more of a walk in the countryside and a quiet scotch at the end of the evening. But it's still a remarkable and exciting project, especially for those of us in Bedfordshire. The scale of it is incredible. So this is going to be probably the biggest tourist attraction in the UK. Covers around 700 acres, and it's expected to put in around 10 million visitors per year, which, to put it in context, that's about 4 times Alton Towers. And this will create about 30,000 jobs in the local area, which, alongside the famous expansion of Luton Airport that we talked about previously, talking about a massive boost for the local economy.
And last time you mentioned as well, there's actually loads of support for it. Everyone seems quite enthusiastic.
Yeah, it's really quite incredible for a mega project. So as locations go, it's pretty much perfect. It's on a derelict industrial site just south of Bedford, right off the M1, with a little dual carriageway linking the two. Nobody really lives there. There's like 10 people who can basically have their houses bought and move on. And it's next to one of the least used mainline railway stations in Britain. And perhaps because of this, in part, it's a hugely popular project. It has almost, if you'll excuse the pun, universal support among the public. Local MPs are on board. All of the councils in the area are completely in favour, like unanimous support. Obviously, Universal still have to build the whole thing, which is going to take about 4 or 5 years. But so far, this has been a textbook example of a successful pitch with enormous support. There's just one institution, one organisation that seems to be opposed, James. Can you guess what it is?
Martin, when you asked me that on the Abundance Agenda podcast, surely it's got to be our old friends at Natural England. They've already killed one theme park. Have they gone for another?
So no. And in fact, even people like the Campaign to Protect Rural England have expressed largely support for the proposal. It's genuinely incredible. Now, there's one organisation that seems to have a problem with it, and it is, in fact, the British Broadcasting Corporation, who, for reasons that are entirely unknown, have decided to wage basically a sort of one institution war against the Universal theme park to a degree that actually, when you start going back over their coverage, is genuinely quite astonishing.
Not my beloved BBC. Auntie wouldn't do this to us.
I mean, you would think not, and I'm usually the first one to kind of call bullshit on people who complain about the BBC not covering their protest or covering another protest too much, or, the classic thing that you see on Blue Sky of, why isn't this thing being reported on the BBC when it's very obviously on the front page of the BBC? So I always try and defend them, but if I walk you through a selection of recent headlines about the theme park, the first is traffic fears over Universal theme park plan. And it leads with the line, concerns have been raised that plans for Universal Studios' first theme park have not accounted for the potential impact on the roads. Now, who do you think raised these concerns, James, to the point that the BBC feels compelled to report on them?
That sounds like something they probably would have accounted for, but I don't know what you're saying. It sounds like, is there an expert panel of some sort who have weighed in on this, of YouGov or Upholstered, and sort of a scientifically weighted poll showing some skepticism?
No, it's a single local councillor. So concerns is the plural is doing a lot of work here. It's basically one concern from one person, but apparently that's enough for the BBC's local democracy reporting service to run an entire story on it, despite the fact that there's extensive stuff in the plan about how the site's going to connect to the M1. They're going to upgrade that road, various junctions, the A4T1, all of the like fun numbered roads that dads like to talk about. And this is sort of a continuing theme in the BBC's coverage. So their reporting of the theme park is absolutely riddled with this continuous language of concerns. So another headline from the local democracy reporting service reads, Council to back universal plans despite concerns. Now, what sort of image does that raise in your mind, James, when you imagine the council meeting that must have led to this?
I guess this must have been pretty feisty, people butting heads, a lot of anger and contention.
No, the council absolutely 100% in favour, unanimous support for this. They think it's going to be a huge economic boost. It's going to create tens of thousands of jobs. They're really excited because they think there's an opportunity to revitalise Bedford town centre, which is a lovely kind of town centre along the river there. And they're all for it. Now, like any sensible council, they're looking to get a little bit of extra government funding. So, they'd like a bit more money for infrastructure and buses and all that sort of stuff. But from the headline, you'd imagine that this was some kind of deeply controversial project and the council are sort of reluctantly pushing ahead despite these obvious problems. But it's simply not the case. And speaking of concerned councils, here's another BBC headline. Town near Universal site worried about impact.
Oh, worried. How near is this town?
So this is the town of Ampthill. It's local to me. And the town centre is a kind of a fight club for middle-class SUV drivers trying to get into the local Waitrose car park most of the time. And among other things, the town council there are concerned that more people might rent Airbnbs in the area, which, could change the character of some parts of it. But this is the really serious complaint, James. They're concerned that there might be light pollution from any fireworks displays that take place at the theme park. And to answer your question, James, of how near is it, it's about 6 miles away, and it's on the other side of the Greensand Ridge, which is a range of hills that cuts across Bedfordshire. So again, unless you sort of leave the town and go right to the top of the hill and look out towards Bedford, I'm not entirely sure there's going to be a lot of light pollution from the firework displays happening there. Now, luckily, it turns out that there is one small thing that Universal can do to correct this injustice and make things right for the town of Ampthill. And that apparently is to give every family in Ampthill a free family ticket for 1 year to the theme park. Amazing.
So is this just a shakedown? Like, nice theme park you've got there. It'd be a shame if someone was to drag it through endless judicial reviews.
Yeah, exactly. It's just shameless opportunities. I mean, I applaud it. Frankly, it's amazing. This is exactly what you want your local town council to do. Like, extort as much money and free tickets out of the new attraction as you possibly can. At one point, they literally say, oh, we're worried that local residents won't get direct benefits from the park, by which they mean money. Now, obviously, everyone's going to be Airbnb-ing their home, so there's going to be quite a substantial amount of money flowing into Ampthill from the Universal theme park, I suspect. But what they want is a discretionary fund, James. So basically just give us a pot of money and we'll be happy and we'll go away and we'll spend it on park benches or a graffiti project or some new bus shelters, whatever. And we'll be perfectly happy, which fair play.
It's simultaneously absurd, Martin, but it's also the system sort of working as designed in that they're representing their local people, trying to get something for nothing. But in any case, if this park is so widely supported and you're getting these stories with headlines on saying, oh, concerns, people aren't happy, etc., it just seems a bit disproportionate. It seems like a bit of a weak thing for the BBC to cover with this sort of framing.
Yeah, it's really bizarre, and I haven't even got to the most tenuous stuff yet. So, another headline is Universal Site's residents say they feel forgotten. This is basically that there's like 10 houses on the site which are going to be compulsorily purchased and moved on, and obviously it's inconvenient if you're those people, but they haven't been forgotten. They're going to get a big fat check from a construction company any day now. So again, it's a little bit weird to pretend that somehow they've disappeared off the face of the map and aren't being compensated for that in some way. And then there's an incredible headline reporting on claims by the charity Generation Rent, which reads, Universal theme park sparks fear of losing homes. And apparently the argument here is that because the theme park will generate jobs and more economic activity, that's bad because it will cause people to move to the area and house and rent prices will go up. And essentially, I don't really know what they're supposed to do. Like halt all economic growth because it might cause, more people to want to rent in the area. It's a really bizarre kind of way to focus on like more jobs and economic growth.
I suppose this is basically the degrowth mindset in that we can't have new things because everything is seen in zero-sum terms like this. But Martin, are you just cherry picking these headlines? Because, I still love the BBC. I defend the BBC, like you say, like you. It annoys me when people claim, the journalism's bad or biased, because usually they do an incredibly good job. So surely there's some balance here. Like, all the headlines can't surely be bad, can they?
So this is what's kind of mad. So you're right that there are some positive headlines around the theme park, especially when it was first announced, but they tend to be at the national level. So national reporting is like, yeah, a new theme park is opening in the UK and people will get to visit it and it will have all of these zones and blah, blah, blah. And it's all sort of very neutral and high level. But the moment that they get down into the kind of local coverage, it's either sort of neutral but with a weird slant or actively hostile. And there are these weird kind of patterns in the headline and turns of phrase that sort of leave you trying to make out like what exactly they're driving at. So one headline reads, area with 4 drive-throughs could see more added, which is just weird. Like I can't say definitively that it's a negative headline, but it doesn't exactly sound positive.
5 drive-through Martins, that's insane.
Yeah, it's like first they built the KFC and I was fairly happy with that. But then they added the McDonald's and the Burger King. And to be honest, that was kind of okay. But Starbucks, I draw the line at, like what's this? And this is just a retail park, like on an industrial estate next to where the theme park's going to be. And again, it's just such a weird way of phrasing things, just an absolutely weird headline to choose for that article or even to write about that topic in the first place, because it like a new drive-through opens up. So what? Another article was broadly quite positive, but they did some vox pops in the town centre of Bedford. And the line they use in the piece is Bedford residents had mixed thoughts on the plans when asked. But literally every single person they spoke to in the piece was overwhelmingly positive about the theme park. Some people mentioned things like, okay, there might be a bit more traffic or rents might go up. But every single person started out saying, we're delighted with this new theme park. I can't wait for my grandchildren to visit it. It's going to bring lots of jobs and growth to the area. We're really excited. And yet somehow this gets reported as residents have mixed views. And it follows this pattern where basically any local reporting is almost comically negative. Like they almost have to manufacture the idea that there's some kind of local opposition in order to make a story out of it.
So what's going on here, Martin? Is there some sort of conspiracy? So are people blaming Israel or the woke mob or Robbie Gibb, or what's going on? Are the BBC just angry that another media company is building a theme park on their turf or something like that?
I mean, it does sort of raise the question, why is there no BBC World? I mean, other than the BBC World Service, but like BBC World would be amazing.
It's funny you should mention that, Martin, because down in North Kent, where I am, there was going to be a theme park called the London Resort. We've talked about that previously on the show as well. And they actually had a deal with the BBC. So we've been deprived of a terrifying ride that I've invented. I think it could have been like the Tower of Terror, only you get strapped into this machine, a bar comes down on you to keep you stuck there like going on a roller coaster, but then it doesn't move, it doesn't drop down. You're just forced to watch Question Time with Giles Fraser, Owen Jones, Teresa Villiers and Nigel Farage. Terrifying.
Yeah, that's spine-tingling stuff, James, and I'm sure will go down very well with the kids. But leaving that aside, no, there's a weird NIMBY bias, and I don't think it's a conspiracy. I think it's just a function of how the BBC does local reporting. So Tom Phillips made a really interesting observation on Blue Sky recently. where he said, and I'm not going to even attempt to impersonate him, actually, because I'm not sure I know what he sounds like. A thing I've long suspected but never got round to rigorously checking is that the local democracy reporting service is, effectively, structurally NIMBY, because a disproportionate amount of the available material, if you're covering local democracy, is planning objections.
And to be clear, the local democracy reporting service we've been talking about, this is the scheme where the BBC pay for, I think, a few hundred journalists to do the sort of boring local journalism that's no longer profitable. So they have sort of young reporters, typically people in their early 20s, going out to council meetings and doing all the boring stuff and going and watching court cases and that sort of thing, which in principle, I think is a pretty good idea.
Yeah, exactly. So the idea of it is that it kind of boosts local reporting in the regions by funding these journalists who can dig up stories and represent local communities and bring those stories not just to the BBC, but to partner media organizations as well. But I think what's unintentionally happened is that they've created a service where basically any councillor with a grudge or any minor protest has just a direct channel to becoming news. And it's much easier and I guess probably more likely to get hits to cover these things than to do detailed positive reporting on, say, here are the businesses who are really excited about the theme park that's coming, or the residents that can't wait to go on the James Bond ride or whatever and see spades in the ground. And I think ultimately it's kind of a failure of imagination in how the BBC covers local democracy, and it's ended up with this powerful NIMBY bias in local news.
I mean, maybe they've got the same problem I've got in that you can't be too positive. You can't sincerely enjoy something. You need that sort of detached irony. You need that cool skepticism to be cool and sound like you're not a complete shill for the big corporation. But anyway, Martin, so we've identified this apparent bias in what the BBC can do. So is there anything that people can do now if they want to support, say, I don't know, media outlets who push against the NIMBY bias? Or perhaps, there are people out there who want to listen to content that's actually pro-growth and pro-development.
No, I can't think of anything, James. Sorry. I guess we'd better move on to the next segment.